Hi everybody, it's John back with another model inbox review. Um, you probably don't need to know that this is a Red Arrows display team aircraft, but it's actually a T Mark 1 Folland Gnat, which was the original mount of the Red Arrows team display team. This particular image is showing a very poignant image for the version of the kit that I want to build, because I had to get some decals for this source from another source. But this aircraft is XS-111, which is actually Ray Hanna's mount when he flew the 4 years between 1964 and 1969 display seasons. Um, and he flew this Gnat, and he was one of the inaugural pilots for the Red Arrows, if you like, and transitioned the Red Arrows from a 7-ship aircraft team to a 9-ship aircraft team to enable them to fly diamond formation, which has become like a set theme for the Red Arrows ever since. Before we go into the inbox review, um, I need to show you a few different types of Gnats so that when we get into the options and costs, because I have actually included every Gnat model that's available on the market. There aren't that many, and what is out there is actually quite interesting, but you might need to have some photographic images to understand exactly what some of the options and costs are for. So we'll go from Ray Hanna's Gnat to the first image, which is this one. This is the Folland Gnat T Mark 1 in its original guise from about 1964, when the aircraft entered service with the Royal Air Force in the advanced trainer role. And these aircraft were intended to take student pilots from the Jet Provost to an operational conversion unit, and this aircraft was to train them how to fly fast jets. The Gnat wasn't quite supersonic, but it could achieve a marginal supersonic speed in a shallow dive. But in straight level flight, they flew at what's called a transonic speed. And it's interesting to see here because you've got the two Provosts that were still in service with the RAF. Up until the Gnat's introduction into service, you have the Provost Mark 1 here, or what's often called the Piston Provost, which was the basic trainer. And then you had the Jet Provost, this one I think is a T Mark 3, which was a transition aircraft between the Piston Provost and the Gnat. And here you have the Gnat behind the fast jets that you would train to fly in the Gnat. You have a Harrier GR Mark 1 here. You have a Lightning, what looks like an possibly an F3. There's a Javelin there, probably an FAW, probably a 6 or maybe a 9. There's a Hunter and a Canberra at the back there. You can just see them in line. Anyway, that was the T Mark 1 Gnat that first entered service in 1964 with the Royal Air Force. The next option of the Gnat is actually what's called the Display Team Yellowhammer's Gnat T Mark 1. And this display team was a team set up for the Royal Air Force in around about 1960, I would say about 64, 65. And they were the principal national display team for the Royal Air Force, and they flew Gnat T Mark 1s, and they were called the Yellowhammers, and the aircraft were yellow all over. I can't remember how many there were, but I've got a feeling it might have been 6. But when you see Yellowhammer in the option and costs, they're talking about this version, which is the Yellowhammer display team mount for the RAS Red Arrows, RAS Yellowhammers display team. Next you have the actual Red Arrows Gnat itself, the T Mark 1. This one is at extreme low level. Not sure who's flying this one, but it wouldn't surprise if it was Ray Hanna himself. And I think this image was taken prior to 1967 because the aircraft didn't adorn the front white stripe that went underneath the canopy toward the front nav light there, between the air intake and the front of the nose. So I'm guessing this was probably taken around about 1966, maybe 65, something like that. But the aircraft is flying at pretty low level, and yeah, it's dispensing with its petroleum smoke behind. Then we have an aircraft called the Folland Gnat F Mark 1. These aircraft were what the Gnat was originally designed to do. The Gnat F Mark 1 was exactly the same as the Gnat T Mark 1, but it had a slightly lower rated engine, and it was optimized for the airborne interceptor role and carried only one seat. The aircraft was purchased by Finland, who found the aircraft quite problematic when in service in extreme low temperatures like you get in Finland. But the aircraft saw extensive use in the Hindustani Air Force, for the Indian Air Force, if you like, against the Pakistan Air Force in their Paco-Indian wars. And the Gnat it became very highly known as the saber killer, because it killed an awful lot of sabers for very little losses. The Indians also developed the aircraft into this, which is called the HAL Ajit. This is basically a license-built version of the F Mark 1 Gnat, but with uprated avionics. And there were other innovations as well, like radar warning receivers, and there were other upgrades for the Indian Air Force, solely for the Indian Air Force. Anyone ever wondered where the guns are? There were two 30mm cannons on an F Mark 1 variant of the Gnat, or the Ajit, and they were actually, can you see this little lip here in the air intake lip? The barrel actually stops around about here. You can see there are 4 or 5 holes, and then the gun actually became installed behind the curvature of the air intake, and there was one each side, and they proved extremely accurate firing platform. And the Ajit was still in service as late as about 1977, when it was replaced by more modern aircraft. Anyway, the kit we're actually looking at now is the 1/48 scale Folland T Mark 1 Gnat, and this kit was originally released in 2014, so it's a relatively new tool. It's only 11 years old, and it was originally released in this guise, which is the original trainer variant from the mid-60s, and the later trainer colours, which I think appeared around about mid-1970s. And these aircraft were of course replaced in 1978 or 79 by the Hawker Siddeley Hawk, which is still in service now with the Royal Air Force. But this kit was released in 2014 and basically boxed the two trainer variants of the Gnat that were used by the RAF in the 60s and 70s. And in 2014 you also had this kit, which is actually the subject of the model that I've got boxed in front of me here. I'll talk about this when we go through the. I'll talk about what I want to talk about in this kit when we go through the actual instructions and the painting guide, because I've got a couple of things I want to say about these two kits that are actually optioned in this box. And the research to find the information that I did get was really, really hard. It took me over 40 minutes last night to find out who actually flew these two aircraft. But anyway, in 2014, the Red Arrow's Folland Gnat T Mark 1 variant was released in 48 scale. And this is the boxing that I've got an example of in Box Review today. In 2014, they also did a 50th display season anniversary box set in 48 scale, comprising the Airfix 48 scale Gnat and the Airfix 48 scale Hawker Siddeley Hawk. Interesting to note that when this box was made available, the Gnat was a 2014 brand new release, and the Hawk I think it originated in the late 80s, possibly early 90s. But you'd have to check on ScaleMates, but it was a much, much older mould, and I think this might be the next aircraft that Airfix might retool, and it certainly needs to be retooled. It's quite an old mould. The 2014, the 50th display season anniversary box set there from Airfix. Then in 2020, Airfix released a 3-option box set of the Folland Gnat T Mark 1. They released the original T Mark 1 from the 60s. They also released a Yellowhammer T Mark 1 display team aircraft, and I think this is a private venture, privately owned Gnat, on the display circuits in and around Europe. and that was released in 2020. And then in 2025 they are re-releasing this year the 48 scale Gnat. I haven't got any details of the two versions, and I'm guessing that when the box comes out it will have the two versions in a window here at the right hand side, but there's nothing been released for publication, but it does possess the same original artwork. Nice image here of the red arrows. This is the display team, probably around about 1977, where the white like electric laser flash was quite common on the nose section of the aircraft, and I just think it's a nice image of the aircraft itself with the rest of the team. We'll just pan the camera down very quickly now and have a look at this kit, because I'm pretty sure you're going to be quite amazed. Now, I have built this kit before, because I can't get my camera to go down properly. There we go. I have built this kit before because I did buy and build the 50th display season anniversary box set with the Hawk and the Gnat T-Mark 1, and I do know before I even open this box, this kit is absolutely beautiful. On the side you've got some CAD images here, and it gives you an idea of what you can expect when you have a look at the parts and start building this kit up. You've got optional position canopy, optional position flaps, detailed cockpit interior. You've got quite a nice profiled and finely detailed undercarriage arrangement, and also in the nose you've also got an opening nose lid at the top to expose the avionics that you find inside the nose cone. Now, I did do the original version virtually like this, but I had the canopy closed. I didn't have the canopy open like this, but what I might do with this one is close everything up but have the canopy open, because I've done that before and I didn't really like the kit with the nose section open. The image on the box is actually the Gnats are upside down, I know, but the writing is the right way up. That's exactly how Airfix wanted the box artwork. And there you've got the two options that come with the kit, but I'm actually building a third option that I have the decals for from the 50th anniversary display season. On the other side you've got the two variants in close up there of the red arrows Gnat. One was from 1977 and the other is from 1979, and I'll explain more about that. You've got the Humbrol callouts, 2 flying hours on this kit, skill level 2. I would suggest it could actually be a skill level 3, because to get the fuselage halves together on this kit I did find it a bit of a taxing problem, but once the fuselage halves are together it's actually quite a nice looking model. What we'll do quickly is we'll just put the plastic into here and we'll have a look at the instruction leaflets, and we'll have a look at these in a minute because it's quite interesting. Instructions. The instructions itself are the A4 sheet of paper, not really an issue really. You've got 5 different languages on the front with information on the aircraft and service for the red arrows for the Gnat, and specs on the aircraft, and you've got some model dimensions written at the top there as well, and on the bottom you've just got some more information from Hornby Hobbies and their Margate address in Kent there. Yeah. Anyway, on the back you've got the there's 2 of these. There's this colour guide, which is a 79 marked variant, and on the back page of the instruction leaflet you've got the 77 variant of the T-Mark 1 Gnat. So that's quite self-explanatory. The kit builds up in 37 different stages, and on the opening page you've got assembly instructions, which is actually in 12 different languages, and the assembly icon instructions there, which again are in lots of different languages as well. Pretty much like telling your granny to suck eggs, isn't it? And then on the build flow is actually typical Airfix, where you have a lot of parts. The instructions very simplified in nature, and they give you a very simplified and easy to follow instruction manual. In section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9 is basically to do with putting the ejection seats, instrument panels and the cockpit tub together. Section 1 there, you're actually putting the landing gear recess for the wheel well into the bottom of the cockpit tub. And then there are 2 decals there for the instrument panel. I'll probably be not using those decals. I prefer to paint my instrument panels. I think, you know, yeah, they are quite good, but when you've got an instrument panel which has loads of embossed styles, trying to get a decal on them is not fun. There's an option for the ejection seats, which I really like with this kit. And there's also pilot, which is unusual for a 48 scale aircraft. But basically you put the 2 ejection seats together there in section 4 and 5 with the rocket unit at the back, and then in section 6 you have the option to either have the seat for the pilot or the seat without the pilot. And the seat with the pilot comes with a plain pad. Seat without the pilot, you've got the ejection belt, the safety belts and the padded harness for the ejection seat there, which I think is a nice touch. And this actually is followed on with a lot of other 48 scale fast jet aircraft that they do in new tools from Hornby Hobbies. Anyway, you've got some pull cords there for the ejection seats and the pad for the ejection seat head restraint and the rear bulkhead, which is quite easy to follow in the paint guides and everything. It tells exactly what to do, when to do it, and what colours to paint. Then in section 10, you're basically putting the seats into the tub. And in section 11, this is where things start to get quite interesting. Section 11, you put in the starboard fuselage and air intake assembly together. And then in section 12, you're putting a wheel well assembly into the starboard fuselage. And then in section 13, you're putting the wheel well into the starboard fuselage, so you're assembling it in 12. And 14, you've got the air intake assembly, which is done in 2 halves, an inner and an outer half. And then in section 15, you're basically putting the air intake into the fuselage half. And that's where your fun begins, because you're also putting the bathtub, the cockpit tub rather, into the fuselage half. And then you've got the rear jet pipe, the Gnat being powered by Bristol Siddeley Orpheus. It was quite a pokey little aircraft, but as a fighter it was deemed to be a little bit as a trainer to house 2 people, the Orpheus was deemed to be slightly underpowered, so they put an uprated engine into the aircraft. But in section 18, you're putting the forward turbine into place, and then in section 19 you're putting the avionics tub into the nose section, and then you've got the option there, if you don't want to use the lifting section for the nose, you don't need that avionics tub for the nose. Do you put it on and just place it on, or I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that. I'll have a look at that, but I didn't really like it fixed in the open position. It wasn't for me. Then you've got the port fuselage half in section 20 with the air intake again. If you want to use the stand, by the way, that instruction there is to open up the holes with a modelling knife, so it's not an issue. And then in section 22 and 21, you're putting the other wheel well together and then fixing it into the fuselage half. And then again 23 and 24 is the air intake for the port side. Then you get into what I call the interesting part of this kit, which is marrying the 2 fuselage halves together in section 25. This, when I built my first Gnat, was a pig, because those air intakes, they're a bit difficult to clip into place around that turbine. And to be honest with you, I don't think you'll ever see the turbine, because the air intakes, you can see there's a curve in the air intakes. But I did paint it up and put it in, and I didn't think you could see it. Maybe you can if you shine a torch down there. Section 26, you're putting the head-up display cover, cockpit cover for the rear pilot into place. And then section 27, and these are really lovely wings. The wing parts on this kit are beautiful. You're putting the wing assembly together with the ailerons. And then you have to open up the holes if you want to put the 2 slipper tanks on, which of course you won't need to with the Red Arrows version, because the Red Arrows never use slipper tanks. Then the wings go into place on the top of the fuselage, and then you've got the optional position flaps left and right hand wing there, and that takes you up to section 30. Quite easy really so far. Then you've got section 31, you've got the tail fin and the tail planes with the rudder there, as you can see. Quite easy to follow. And then they're giving you a nice image there to show you what the degree angle are, and those tail planes should be absolutely flat, opposed to one another at 90 degrees. Then in section 32 you have the option to either have the undercarriage doors shut or the undercarriage doors open. Yeah, undercarriage on this kit is really nice. The Gnat had an unfortunate looking main undercarriage gear because it made the aircraft look a little bit like a duck trying to waddle, but it's faithfully reproduced in this kit, so you can see that. You've got weighted tyres there as well, which is a nice touch. Then you've got an interesting feature in section 33, because that's actually the diesel plume generator pipe, and what it did was it used to pump dyed petroleum into the efflux of the jet pipe to produce the red, white and blue smoke, and this can be this is cemented into place with a jig part that goes in between the two pipes, and then you cut the jig part away on this edge, as you can see here, and it leaves you with what it should look like on the real aircraft. And you've got a pitot tube in section 34 with I think that's a VHF aerial. And then you've got this option as to what you want to do with the forward nose cone in section 35. Do you want the avionics displayed or do you want them open? It's the same part, you just have to trim them down if you don't want the part in the open position. And then D6 and B1 there are more aerials and nav lights. Quite easy to follow. The instructions are very easy. And then in 36 and 37 you're basically just finishing off the glazing for the cockpit and a few other aerials, and then you're doing the optional position canopy. As I said, I'll probably be doing the canopy open in this kit because I think it might be quite interesting to have that open and displayed. Colour callouts, as I said before, you've got the two different Gnat versions for the red arrows. One was from Kemble based in 1977 and that one's from Kemble based in 1979. Right, so that's the instructions. They're quite easy to follow. And what I want to talk about now are the decals, because there's a little bit of a story behind the decals. If you buy the 50th Display Team Anniversary box set, which has the Hawk and the 48 scale Gnat in it, you'll get a decals sheet which comprises of the serial numbers that I want for this particular kit, but you don't get them in this particular kit. I'll show you what they are in a minute. The decal you do get is basically all the rest of the decals that you need, but the interesting thing is that you don't need either of these two stripes, because in the 64 to 69 Display Team seasons, the Gnats didn't carry either of these two lightning stripes on the front forward fuselage. They just carried the badge. And have I got the badge on here? No, I haven't. So I'll probably just cut these two badges out and use those two. And you'll need all of these because these are common as well. Now, there aren't that many stencils in this kit, which I'm quite glad of. Because stencils on a 48 scale kit can be a bit of a nightmare. These decals are actually cartographed. They're absolutely gorgeous. The backing film on them is clear as out. The instrument panels there are quite clear. You can see the dials, everything. Interesting, they've got Rolls-Royce power plants written on there, but this aircraft was actually powered by Bristol Siddeley engine. But Rolls-Royce, of course, bought Bristol Siddeley eventually, and they became part of Rolls-Royce Group. But yeah, these decals are really nice, and the register on them is absolutely perfect, and they're hardly raised. You can hardly feel them at all. But now I want to show you this decal sheet, because this decal sheet carries the decals for the rest of the team. And the decal that I'm interested in are those two excesses in the top left hand corner there, and then at the end of the 996 you've got two 111s. And then on the end of here you've got XS111, and they're the only decals I'm interested in off this decal shit, because XS111 was Ray Hanna's Gnat, and Ray Hanna was the guy who led the Red Arrows as the team leader for a record 4 years, and he also developed the team from a 7-ship team flight to a 9-ship team flight, and he was probably one of the most famous pilots, and certainly is flying the airshow circuits even now. He's usually the pilot behind the very famous Spitfire Mark 9 MH354, which does a lot of display circuits, but it's been utilised heavily in the media. Anyway, let's have a look at the parts to see what we've got here. I've had a look through here and there's no parts off sprue, which is great. And what I quickly want to do is just cut this open, because I want to show you this canopy, because it's absolutely beautiful. And I mean really, really nice. Let's just chop this open very quickly. There we go. Get this out so we can show you what's going on. I won't need that. I do want that because I want to put the canopy parts back in. You can see here the canopy parts on this kit are really, really clear, but not only are they really clear, the framing on that canopy is absolutely gorgeous. It'll paint up beautiful. The shape of the Gnat's canopy, it's absolutely perfect. And I remember building this kit before and thinking, God, they're really nice, and they really are. They're very, very nice indeed. Let's take these scissors out of the way so you can see this a little bit clearer. Can you see that? Really nice piece of moulding. And there's a nav light that goes on front of the nose cone, a couple of wing nav lights, and the forward windscreen, the rear canopy cover, and that is actually a glazing shield for the rear pilot, in case the front pilot ejects before the rear pilot, and then he doesn't get blasted by the rockets coming out of that. So I'm quite pleased again with the transparency, so they look really nice. And now let's have a look at the parts. We'll take them out. We'll take the sprues out part by, as they come out the sprue. And I'm not going to go pedantic through these, but the texture of this is quite nice. It's got a sort of a contoured pattern to the texture of the plastic, which is quite nice. Pilot figure there. You don't get many pilot figures in 48 scale Airfix kits anymore, but he is lovely, isn't he? There's Ray. There's the cockpit tub. Again, you've got nice details on that. The floor looks nice. That'll take on a nice wash. That's the slipper tanks, which I won't be using. The air intakes, that's the outer part, and that's the inner part. All the flaps, optional position flaps and ailerons, sorry. That's the forward avionics tub for the nose cone. As you can see, it's all in one part, but it's quite nicely detailed, isn't it? And those two are the rear, the main undercarriage oleo wheel wells, which are nice. Undercarriage doors there. That's the nose section. Have a look at the top of that, you can see. And these two things here, these are the rocket runners for the ejection seats, and they go on the back of the ejection seats. All these finely detailed and beautifully cast parts. They're really, really nice. So that's the first sprue. Very happy with that. The second sprue, let's pop that over there. The second sprue comprises of some minor details and the main wings, and I'll show you the main wings in a minute, but let's have a look at these minor details. You can see the main undercarriage main undercarriage wheels there. There's the seatbelt side pans and the Orpheus turbojet at the front there, the fan itself. That's that jig part for the petroleum release for the 3 different coloured smokes, which is quite nice. One of the bulkheads and the glare cover for the HUD for the rear cockpit, and then you've got the 2 tailplanes. They're beautifully detailed as well. Look at the detail on those. Beautifully recessed panel lines. And you've got a couple of tabs here. Actually no, that's a tail fin. That's one half of the tail fin with the rudder retained tabs there. There's your 2 tail planes. And then you've got your underside of the wings. You can see there, they're beautifully detailed, aren't they? Really, really nice. And then you've got the upper wing. And that, it's a piece of work, isn't it? What a piece of crafting that is. It's beautiful. All recessed panel lines. The thing is, the kit is actually finished in gloss red paint, and they were highly polished, so you won't need to weather it that much. There probably will be a little bit of weathering to do here and there, but not that much. The third sprue, which comprises of quite a few bits and pieces. There's the wheel well for the nose wheel. Right, is that going to come into focus? Just thinking about it. Still thinking about it. There we go. And then some other bits and bobs. Yeah. I like the parts on this kit. They're very, very nice. There's the two different pads for the ejection seats. Plain or with seat belts. And these are the outer air intake panels. And they're quite nice as well, nicely detailed. The instrument panels there, they're nicely detailed. Very nice looking kit. And look at the crispness of those main undercarriage oleos. Really, really nice. And then you've got the fuselage. Again, another nice piece of work. Very, very nice. One half of the fuselage has got the tail fin and the other one hasn't. And of course you've got that separate part. There's the pitot tube. Can't remember what that is, that bit there, but it'll become apparent one day, I should imagine. It looks like a 50cc engine from there, doesn't it? Anyway, that's the parts. I'm quite impressed with the parts. As I was the first time around, I was pretty impressed with the parts the first time around. But what I'll do now is I'll just put the parts back into the plastic bag so that I can make sure that nothing, if anything does ever come off sprue, it will stay in the bag and I won't lose anything. Although getting parts for this kit isn't really an issue because they are releasing it again this year. So yeah, we'll just give you a nice image there of the box art to have a look at. There we go. I'll go through the gumph and get this video finished off. Anyway, the kit we're doing an inbox review on today is the Airfix Folland Gnat T-Mark 1 Red Arrows Gnat. The release date was 2014 and its serial number is A05124, scaled in 1/48. Now there are decals on the box for two versions. The first is a Folland Gnat T-Mark 1 XS107 Red 1 Red Arrows display team flown by Squadron Leader F.J. Hoar, Royal Air Force Kemble 1977, and the second is of a Folland Gnat T-Mark 1 XR977, which was flown as Red 3 Red Arrows display team, flown by Flight Lieutenant B.C. Scott, based at RAF Kemble in 1979. But I'm going to be doing a different version to what is actually coming out of the box, because I'm doing a third version, which is a Folland Gnat T-Mark 1 XS111, which was flown as Red 1 by the Red Arrows display team, flown by Squadron Leader Ray Hanna, RAF Kemble, 1968. There are 91 parts on 3 grey plastic sprues and 7 parts on a transparent sprue, totalling 98 parts in total, which is interesting because on the box it tells you it has 96. It's not true, it's actually 98. The dimensions of the kit are 9 inches long by 6 inches span by about 2 3/4 inches high on its undercarriage. Now the options and costs, which they're not extensive, there aren't huge amounts of them, but I have shown you the images of the different variants, and if you need to pop back at early stage of the video to see exactly what it is, feel free, don't worry about that. But the options and costs, they range originally with the original release of the Lincoln International Folland Gnat, but we'll get to that in a minute. In 1/144th scale, a company called Triple Nuts did a Folland Gnat T-Mark 1 and a Red Arrows Gnat in the same box. They're all 3D resin printed and they retail for anything between £30 and £40, so they're not a cheap option, but they are a very accurate, reasonably detailed kit. In 72nd scale, there's a company called A&V Models. They do a Folland Gnat T-Mark 1 total resin kit. No details available for that. Aero Club did a Folland Gnat F Mark 1 multimedia kit. This comprises white metal, vac form, canopy, resin parts, and I think some injection moulded parts. And that kit retails for anything between £4 and £18. Aeropoxy also did a Folland Gnat F Mark 1, which is a full resin kit, for about £20 to £22. Airfix did a number of releases in 72nd scale. The original release was 1964 tooling of the Folland Gnat T-Mark 1 Red Arrows Gnat, which were all the original tooling in different boxings, but the original Folland Gnat T-Mark 1 was only ever released in 1964 in the original tooling. All the rest are Red Arrows Gnats. These kits retail for anything between £3 and £17. Airfix also produced a Folland Red Arrows Gnat and a Hawk gift set, available between 20 and £30. And Airfix also did a 40th anniversary display team set with 2 Gnats and a Hawk. The 2 Gnats were the Red Arrows Gnat and the yellow ones, well, the yellow hammers. I think they were called the yellow hammers or the yellow jacks. And you had a Red Arrows Hawk in there. That kit is quite rare and it retails about £40 to £55. Airfix also did a much rarer kit release called the Trainer Set with a Gnat, a Bulldog Mark II biplane, and a de Havilland Canada Chipmunk. I haven't got any details available for sales prices on this, but I bet you it would probably be in excess of £50. Airfix also did an authentic collector's set of a Red Arrows 72nd scale Gnat T-Mark 1, which also came with a DVD, I believe, or maybe a video. Again, no prices available for that, but it will probably be very expensive. Airfix also did a Folland Gnat T-Mark 1, a Red Arrows Gnat, and a Yellow Jacks Gnat. All these were new tool boxings. It was the Yellow Jacks, not the Yellow Hammers. I've got no details prices for these, but I have seen them recently sell for as little as £5. Although the original T-Mark 1 tends to sell for about 10, and a Yellow Jacks tends to sell for about 10 as well. But the Red Arrows option, you can often get it for as little as £5. Matchbox did a Hawker Siddeley Red Arrows Gnat T-Mark 1 for about £10 to £20. Pro Resin did a Folland Gnat F Mark 1, an FR Mark 1, an FO141, which was the prototype Gnat F1, the HAL Gnat, the HAL Ajit. They're all resin kits, and they all retail for between £10 and £22 in individual boxings. Special Hobby also do a Folland Gnat F Mark 1, an FR Mark 1, and an HAL Ajit. These kits retail for anything between £10 and £15. Plasti Airfix reboxed the original Airfix Folland Gnat T-Mark 1. That kit, I haven't seen it retail on any Amiga sites, but it will probably go for about a tenner. In 1/48 scale, Aero Club did a Folland Gnat T-Mark 1, an FO141. Again, they're all multimedia kits with white metal parts, vac form, some resin, and some injection moulded parts. These kits aren't cheap at about £25 to £30. Aeropoxy also did a Folland Gnat F Mark 1, an HAL Ajit. They're all resin kits for about £25 to £30. Airfix did the Folland Gnat T-Mark 1 and Red Arrows Gnat. Retails for anything between £18 and £30. And Airfix also did a 50th anniversary gift set comprising a Red Arrows Gnat and a Red Arrows Hawk, £30 to £60 for that. Lincoln International did the original first ever Folland Gnat release, and it was of an F Mark 1 fighter variant. This kit you can often get for as little as £15, but it usually goes for about £20. And a company called Cadder also did a reboxing of the Lincoln International Folland Gnat F Mark 1 fighter. Again, I've got no prices available for that, but it will probably go for the same price as the Lincoln International kit. Now, conclusions. I did build this kit before, and it is an absolute gem. It has fine injection mouldings and crisp detail, and a finely detailed cockpit and even a pilot, which is great. I will be doing Ray Hanna's mount, as he flew for a record 3 years as the leader Red 1 from 1964 to 1968 display season. I hope this video has been of some use. If you have any queries or questions, just pop them in the comments boxes and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks for watching and tuning in. Speak to you again. Bye for now.